Louisville continues to dominate on the road.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this post-game recap edition of the Locked On the Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. This episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Louisville Cardinals traveled up to South Bend, Indiana to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and defeated the home team 75-60 on Sunday evening, extending the winning streak to 4. A lot of shout-outs that we have to give throughout the episode today, and trust me, we will give those shout-outs. We'll identify the 3 things that impressed me the most in this win for the Cardinals, and for the first time in the history of the show, we will crown a player of the game. To conclude the show, we'll discuss the hot start to the season for the Louisville baseball squad, going 2-1 against all ranked opponents down in the Lone Star State to begin the year. So some great stuff coming out of opening weekend. Pat Kelsey's team looked to continue to be really good on the road when they traveled up to South Bend. And I mentioned this this past week. And I'm not sure if you all get this same vibe, but when I see that the Cardinals are playing in South Bend, it just makes me a little nervous automatically. And it might be because of the way these matchups used to go, playing at Notre Dame when the Cardinals were in the Big East and early on in the ACC. It felt like Louisville just got a pretty miserable whistle when they play at Notre Dame. There's been some close matchups that the Cardinals have been on the wrong side of. And ultimately, I mean, everything that you see about this game suggests to you that the Cardinals should win it. They're a 7.5-point favorite. Notre Dame has double-digit losses. Louisville is really good on the road, but it's just something there for me that I was like, I just hope this is me just being a little scared internally. And it was a close game. Back and forth through the duration of the first half. Louisville would get close to a 10-point lead, and Notre Dame would answer, and then Louisville would do it again, and Notre Dame would do that again, and just continue to go back and forth, a game of runs. And then in the second half, with just under 9 minutes remaining, Marcus Burton hit either a jumper or a layup and cut the lead to 7. And throughout the first portion of the second half, it was just trading baskets over and over. When Louisville's lead was cut to 7, 51-44, with about 10 minutes to go, was when the team did what they have done multiple times this year, and that is played the best basketball of the night in the final 10 minutes of the game. And there's one player that I remember, shout out to Ty Spalding for tweeting this out, but I had thought the same exact thing. There's one player that I believe is directly responsible for this, or at least played a huge portion in this, and we'll identify who that is at the end of this segment going into the next one. But how nice is it to see when Louisville isn't blowing teams out for the entirety of the game like they did against NC State and SMU and Wake Forest, the list goes on. When they are in a back and forth game, what happens? Well, more often times than not this season, they have played their best basketball at the end of the game. Now, know that when I say the end of the game in this context, I'm talking about the final 10 minutes. Because when Louisville has needed to be clutch, they've been clutch. Chucky Hepburn was fantastic, not only just through the entire duration of this game, but more specifically in the final 10 minutes. being able to be a lockdown defender. Louisville's defense was incredible all night. J'Vonne Hadley had 2 big three-pointers in this game in the second half that ultimately just pushed this game out of reach. But you go to that point in the game, and it was 9:55. Marcus Burton hit 2 free throws. My apology. Hit 2 free throws. Chucky Hepburn made jumper. James Scott made layup. I think that was the lob that looked like it was going to be a dunk, but somehow Scott was able to bank it in. Traore had an and one. And then J'Vonne Hadley hit his 2 big three-pointers. So just whenever a team has gotten close in the second half against Louisville, oftentimes the Cardinals are still being able to withstand the punches and play their best ball. Now, there were some injuries in this game. J'Vonne Hadley looked like he stepped on a Notre Dame player's ankle and just rolled it a bit. He ended up immediately going out of the game and walking up the tunnel, and everyone was like, uh-oh, here we go. And thankfully, it didn't seem to be that serious. Hadley ended up coming back into the game and finishing the contest. And then there was that Derrick Henry-esque stiff arm at the very end of the game with 26 seconds that forced Chucky Hepburn to the ground. He ended up getting hurt to the point to where Pat Kelsey ended up coming onto the floor, making sure his star point guard was okay. Rain Smith did mention in the postgame interview that it was a situation where Chucky just got the wind knocked out of him, and that was the hope all along. Now, admittedly, this episode is being recorded at about 10:30 immediately following the game. It's going to be released at midnight on Monday. I don't know what Pat Kelsey will have answered about this. Just know that there could be new information that disagrees with what I'm saying or confirms it. I won't be able to know until I get done recording this, and by that time I can just go back and re-edit that in. Felt like a really balanced effort. All 5 starters scoring in double digits for the Cardinals. It was Chucky Hepburn leading the way with 16. Terrence Edwards had 14. Also, congratulations to Mr. Edwards welcoming his child into the world this weekend. So congratulations to him and his family. He had a very, very solid game on Sunday evening, 14 points. J'Vonne Hadley had 10 points, 2 critical threes in the second half. Rain Smith, 4 of 11, had 12 points. Most of his work came in the first half, but overall really solid performance from the Cardinals sharpshooter. And James Scott, 10 points, 10 rebounds, a double-double in the custom mask made by those students at Speed School at the University of Louisville. He also had a steal and a block in this game. I don't know about you all, but that whistle was, for lack of better terms, interesting. Being more specific, comically predictable. I have no problem if an officiating crew wants to allow both teams to play physical. That's what I've come to know from Louisville basketball, playing in the Big East, where, I mean, the most physical conference there's ever been in college basketball history. Early on in ACC play, like, Louisville has always been known to play physical, and teams play physical against Louisville. It is what it is. Nobody's whining about it. It's when the whistle gets inconsistent and you pick and choose where to call tic-tac fouls, and especially in that second half, multiple times where you're like, oh, okay, well, that guy got mugged, and oh, wow, he barely touched him. There was a situation, I'll highlight a couple of them. Abubakar Traore defending Tay Davis, and Davis just initiating all of the contact, and Traore's hands are down by his side, and he's called for the foul, and then immediately after, called for another foul where the referee made the decision 5 seconds after the shot was called and said that, well, he hit his hand on the way up. That's another thing that frustrates me about basketball, is officiating waiting to make the call after they see if the shot goes in or out. And I'm like, dude, just make the call regardless. It's just a bailout call in that situation. The play where J'Vonne Hadley had sealed his defender off down in the dunker spot, and the defender's just pulling him basically into the student section. Chucky makes a smart decision and throws the ball to him, and even the broadcasting crew, Debbie Antonelli's like, I don't know how you don't call that a foul. Chucky throws the ball to J'Vonne. J'Vonne can't catch it because his arms are being held back. And what do you do in that situation? And from what we've come to learn about officiating in South Bend when Louisville plays there, it was comically predictable. But for the Cardinals to deal with that whistle and still win by 15 on the road, I think is pretty impressive. Even with Notre Dame being 11-13 in this matchup, I felt like they're better than their record suggests. Now, you look at the fouls, Notre Dame had 4 more fouls. They shot 1 less free throw. But that's one of those situations where go back and watch the game and see how bad some of these calls were. But nonetheless, I'm not going to sit here and just continue to complain because Louisville won the game. That's all that matters. There's a couple things that impressed me the most. And we're going to identify those and crown the player of the game when we come back on this post-game recap edition / Monday episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a larger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my Houston Rockets for a late game rally or I'm picking Jalen Green to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. And with the app being so easy to use, when you win, you get paid instantly. All of this is icing on the cake. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Continuing on along in this post-game recap edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast, man, it's so fun to watch this team play. This is the most fun I've watched, or this is the most fun I've had watching a Louisville team play. No lie. I mean, maybe the 2019-20 season, but maybe even before that, maybe back to like the Donovan Mitchell team in 2016-2017. And maybe that is because we've been without good Louisville basketball for a long, long time, but it's just been fun. The Cardinals are 20-6. They have clinched a bye in the ACC tournament. This is the 54th 20-win season in program history. First 21 season since 2020. So vibes are incredible right now. Cards are back. Let's talk about the 3 things that impressed me the most. I think number 1 is a little bit of a continuation from what we were just saying at the end of the last segment. I was impressed with how the Cardinals dealt with the calls and the physicality. In the second half, with how one-sided these calls were being made, it felt like Louisville was just like, okay, and just kept scoring, kept making plays. And the physicality, look, Notre Dame was playing physical, and I'm okay with that. It was just nice to see the Cardinals rise to that level, play as physical as their opponent, and just continue to be the enforcer. Louisville is at their most successful point when they are enforcing the physicality against their opponent and not the other way around. I felt like Notre Dame got away with countless moving screens, but the Cardinals kept battling through those. There was a point where in the first half, Notre Dame had some big-time shots. Braden Shrewsbury made some key three-pointers. And Pat Kelsey's like, look, don't switch. Don't switch. When they set the screens, and Notre Dame set a ton of them, Louisville was going under them. They were going over them, but they were sticking with their assignment. And it led to the team looking really good on defense. But I was impressed with the physicality on offense, being able to just deal with all of the hand checking. Basically, the defense they were going up against was, well, they can't call every foul type of defense. And they just responded in the right way. The second thing I was most impressed with was, you guessed it, the Cardinals defense, allowing 60 points to a Notre Dame team that scores over 70 a game. The Cardinals were, outside of the first, let's call it 5-6 minutes of the game, really effective on the defensive side, or on the defensive end, I should clarify. And it was everyone. I didn't feel like there was any player that didn't play good on the defensive end. There were a couple situations where they got beat on a backdoor cut or someone missed their assignment, but it wasn't a consistent issue. Notre Dame had 60 points on 36% shooting from the field, 6 of 22 from the three-point line. They shot 27%, which is significantly below their season average. Louisville didn't give up many open threes, which was a talking point and has been a talking point throughout the duration of ACC plays. Like, Louisville has to limit the open shots that they give up. Not many. The shots that Notre Dame hit, really good shots, really tough shots. And it just felt that Louisville was incredibly disruptive. Notre Dame wasn't able to get anything in the paint. They denied a ton of three-point shooting. Marcus Burton, say what you will about that play at the end. It felt like he was just sort of hunting for fouls at the end. But in that first half, I mean, he had 22 points, 8 of 18 shooting, 2 of 5 from the three-point line. He was making some tough shots in that first half. I mean, shifty guard who's only about 5'11", but does a fantastic job of creating separation and being able to, stop on a dime and pull up for a shot, fading away off balance or just stepping into a rhythm opportunity. He's a fantastic scorer. There's a reason why he averages over 21 a game coming into this matchup. Tay Davis had 13. Braden Shrewsbury had 12. I'm sorry, Tay Davis had 15. Those three were the only players in double digits. And we talked about how Notre Dame just does not get much production from their bench. One of the worst teams in the ACC, second worst coming into the weekend, averaging 14 points a game from their reserves on the bench. They did have a player miss this, Matt Alako, who was one of their starters, but their bench tonight had 2 points. They were 1 of 9 from players off the bench. So Louisville just fantastic on the defensive side. The third thing that I was impressed with was the play of a certain member of the Louisville squad that I mentioned in the first segment. Ty Spalding from Louisville Rivals pointed this out, and I couldn't have agreed with him more when he said it because I was thinking it at the same time. Louisville changed the game when they put Abubakar Traore in the second half. He was fantastic. And you look at the box score, 5 points, 3 rebounds, 1 steal. That's not going to wow you whatsoever. But you can't really measure the impact of a glue guy by the box score. At least not the entire impact. Because the defensive effort, creating the second chance points, the defensive rebounds, the on-ball defense in the second half. There was that play in the second half where he drew the foul that gave Louisville another opportunity on offense in the final 10 minutes of the game. When Pat Kelsey subbed him in with around, 10 minutes, he was fantastic. Had the outlet layup to where he got behind the defense and got the AM1. Really good on-ball defense. I have been extremely impressed with Traore since he's come back from that injury. Now, it hasn't always been pretty in terms of scoring, but what do we talk about when Louisville got his commitment? That even when he's not scoring, he is impacting the game in almost every other way. Player of the game, by the way, goes to senior point guard Chucky Hepburn, 7 of 10 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3, 1 of 1 from the free throw line. He had a game-high 16 points, a game-high 6 assists. I'm sorry, a team-high 16 points, a game-high 6 assists. He had 3 steals and a block in this game, played 37 minutes, also had 2 rebounds. Hepburn still dealing with that groin injury, just fantastic. He had some turnovers that you're like, come on, Chucky, what are those decisions? But for the most part, did what he needed to do, just playing the majority of the game. Really good on-ball defense, regardless of who he was defending. And don't let Burton's 22 points change your perception of his performance, because when he scored on Chucky, it was tough buckets. You just have to tip your cap and move on to the next play. Chucky Hepburn is the first official Locked On Louisville player of the game for the Louisville Cardinals. This will be something that we continue with every game from here on out. Will be a player of the game acknowledgement. So 75-60 in favor of Pat Kelsey's squad. 20 wins on the year. They have about a week off. They'll return home to the KFCM Center next Saturday. So some time to get healthy, rest up before they take on Florida State for the second time this season. When we come back, we'll discuss the strong opening weekend for the baseball team, going 2-1 down in the Shriners Children's College Classic down in the Lone Star State. More on that when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Cardinal fans, I want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. A lot of eyes on the Louisville baseball squad this year. The program had missed the NCAA tournament 3 out of the past 4 seasons. A lot of urgency surrounding the 2025 campaign for Dan McDonald's program, and they were going to get tested right away. 3 ranked matchups to start the year in the Shriners Children's College Classic down in Arlington, Texas, playing at Globe Life Field, home of the Texas Rangers. They played a top 10 Texas squad. They played a top 20 Oklahoma State squad and a top 25 Arizona team. They ended up going 2-1 on the weekend. The middle performance was a rough one, but the Cardinals set the tone on Friday night, and I was really impressed with how Patrick Forbes, the opening night starter, performed for the Cardinals. 5 innings of work, allowed 5 hits, 2 earned runs on a home run. Ended up striking out 11. Thought Justin West and Jack Brown did great in relief. Tucker Biven gave up a pretty tough home run, but Louisville was able to clutch up, down 2-0, tied it up with 2 outs in the 9th inning. Garrett Pike with a 2 RBI single, scoring Jake Monroe and Matt Klein. And then Zion Rose with a single to tie the game in the 10th, and Lucas Moore with a single to walk it off on opening day for the Cardinals against the 7th-ranked Texas Longhorns. Now, Saturday's game against Oklahoma State, well, we're just going to kind of forget about that one. It was a situation where they actually had a 3-0 lead. I was like, okay, this looks really solid. And Parker Detmers had 3 effective innings, lost some command in that 4th inning, a pitch clock violation erased a strikeout, gave Oklahoma State a bases load opportunity, first and second. Detmers ended up hitting a batter on the next at-bat, and then a grand slam to set the tone, and Oklahoma State's offense was just lights out. And they looked really good against Clemson the night before. This is a really good Cowboys team. They defeated the Cardinals 12-3 on Saturday. Louisville was able to bounce back with a huge offensive performance, 13-1 against Arizona. Arizona actually started out with a homer in the first inning, and that ended up being the first and only hit of the afternoon for the Wildcats. Peter Michael, the Northwestern transfer, really dialed in and gave the Cardinals 4 2/3 innings, one hit. Colton Hartman, Brennan Cutts. It was nice to see Brennan Cutts, the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year last year, get an inning of work. And then Wyatt Danilowitz had one inning of work as well. So Louisville's pitching staff was fantastic, and the offense exploded in this one. The 5th and the 8th innings, Louisville went on some key surges, 8 runs in the 5th inning, 5 runs in the 8th inning. And it was nice to see Eddie King Jr. be able to snap out of his early season slump. He went 3 of 5 in the final game of the series. Zion Rose went 3 of 5. Matt Klein did the same, and Lucas Moore 2 of 4. So to see the Cardinals offense look much better on day 3 than they did the first 2 games, awesome to see. I felt like Louisville sort of made an opening weekend statement that say, hey, look, you know what? Past couple seasons hasn't been great for us, but we're going to start this season out strong. Louisville will return home for a ton of home games. They've got Xavier on a midweek on February 19th. I'm not sure if that game is going to be played because it seems like we're going to get another winter storm on Tuesday and Wednesday, but Louisville is set to host Western Michigan in the home series this upcoming weekend. So you try not to take away too much this early on in baseball because it takes a while to get going. It's not uncommon for a team to need a couple weeks or even a month to really get going. And sometimes that's been Louisville's issue, even though McDonald is 14-5 in opening games to start seasons. There's been times last year, the year before that, where the Cardinals just didn't perform well. Or maybe not the year before that, last year, and then a couple years before that. I remember when Louisville just got demolished down in Tampa. But the main thing we wanted to see, I'm not really worried about the offense, the pitching staff. How are the starters going to look? And more importantly, what was the bullpen going to be like? This was the worst staff in the ACC last year, 7.72 ERA. Felt like the bullpen was fantastic outside of that Oklahoma State performance, and really encouraged by what I saw. So want to see Louisville Cardinals ascend back to greatness on the baseball side of things. And on the basketball side of things, it looks like Pat Kelsey's doing the same thing. So when we come back tomorrow, we'll discuss a recruit that will be on campus for Louisville men's basketball this weekend. We'll dive into a mailbag. There will not be a Wednesday episode this week. There will only be 4 episodes, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Just want to give you all a heads up. There won't be a Wednesday episode, but we will be back tomorrow. Everyone have a great day. Have a great start to your week. We'll see you then. Go Cards.